Welcome to another episode of Follow the Brand. I am your host, Grant McGaw, CEO of 5-Star BDM, a 5-star personal branding and business development company. I want to take you on a journey that takes another deep dive into the world of personal branding and business development using compelling personal story, business conversations, and tips to improve your personal brand. By listening to the Follow the Brand podcast series, you will be able to differentiate yourself from the competition and allow you to build trust with prospective clients and employers. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. Make it one that will set you apart, build trust, and reflect who you are. Developing your 5-star personal brand is a great way to demonstrate your skills and knowledge. If you have any questions for me or my guests, please email me at grant.mcgaugh, spelled M-C-G-A-U-G-H, at 5-star BDM, B for brand, D for development, M for masters.com. Now let's begin with our next 5-star episode on Follow the Brand. Welcome to the Follow Brand Podcast. I'm your host, Grant McGaugh, CEO of 5-Star BDM, where we help you to build a 5-star brand that people will follow. Today's guest is Carson Heady, a best-selling author, social selling expert, and sales director for Microsoft Health and Life Sciences. Carson V. Heady has a globally recognized track record of success in sales leadership, recruiting, and social selling, creating training for 190 countries across Microsoft and Dale Carnegie. 10X CEO, Platinum, Gold Club champion winner across Microsoft and AT&T. He's also recognized in Gallup Strength Finder. He's in the top 5 for strategic, achiever, competition, maximizer, and input. Best-selling author, Salesman on Fire, and the birth of a Salesman series, consistently ranked in top 20 sales gurus in the world. Ranked in the top 50 sales authors on LinkedIn with over 330,000 social followers. Carson believes in intentionally creating and investing in your personal brand. And that starts with bringing value to create relationships outside the norm. He's passionate about people and process responsiveness and knows that great deals are a byproduct of great relationships, not instant gratification. For Carson, it's all about mastering the art of delivering wins, impacting the people he works with. Carson is an evangelist of the brand, and he has been recognized as the #1 social seller globally at Microsoft. He's also an 8-time CEO President's Club winner across 6 sales and leadership roles at AT&T and Microsoft. He's a contributor to Dale Carnegie training, produces the Salesman on Fire podcast, and has been inducted into the Sales Hall of Fame. Join us as we talk to Carson about his strategies for building and maintaining a successful personal brand and how he has leveraged social selling to create valuable relationships and opportunities. Let us welcome to the Follow Brand Podcast, where we are building a 5-star brand that you can follow, the Noble Knight, Carson Heady. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Follow Brand Podcast. I am your host, Grant McGaugh, and I have one of my brothers from another mother right here, Mr. Carson Heady. This guy, I love his work. I love what he does, because what he does is what I've been doing for maybe 5-6 years, but he's on a whole nother level. What he's done, he's an author. He's got his sales training programs out there. He's been asked to be on major podcast systems. He's in the Hall of Fame for sales. How do you say that? He's in the Hall of Fame for sales And he's on my podcast. He's going to share some of his secret sauce, what he's been doing at a high level for a long time. I'm connected to thousands of salespeople, and they're all climbing that tall mountain to a different bag. And when I say bag, I mean the success. When you champion your cause and you finally reach that higher plateau. You've been doing it for a long time. So I want to bring Carson up. I want him to introduce himself. We're going to have a candid conversations about technical sales. We're both in technical sales, and we're going to talk about the journey it takes to get to those multi-million-dollar deals. So Carson, take it away.
Grant, thank you so much for having me. Great to be on with a kindred spirit who's passionate about technical selling and selling in general. And thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I mean, you obviously alluded to some of the dialogue that we want to have today, but very much a student of selling, very passionate about how we can use all of the tools in the tool belt to create and nurture relationships, and very passionate about personal brand and the value that it really brings to all sellers, specifically in today's day and age.
Without question. And I want to back up in time. I want you to back up in time, Carson, before you were doing social selling, before you were really, you were in that journeyman stage, you were just getting your feet wet, you were getting things done. If I remember right, you have a telecom background like myself. I started selling telecom back in the early 2000s or something like that. And for some odd reason, I'm going to toot my horn. I'm going to toot the horn of all the telecom people out there because they have become some of the best salespeople in the game today. So walk us back to when you first started selling and then how the light bulb went off when you started doing it at a higher level.
Yeah, I love that you said that, Grant, because it's funny. I have two very distinct parts of my career. I worked for AT&T for several years, about 8.5, in fact. And I've just reached 8.5 here at Microsoft, had a couple jumps, hops, and skips in between. But it's interesting because I was kind of born and raised in a one-call close environment, having a call and some of it was inbound, getting calls from customers about their billing and turning around and turning that into a sale. And also one-call closing advertisers. And so this was, light years difference than what we do today, which is, really enterprise level, supporting customers in their digital transformation and more, SaaS-based and cloud-based, transformation. So it's really interesting, but I'm very grateful that I had that experience because it made me fearless, in the face of, just meeting with executives and, understanding how to really play that scale game. And to your point, I mean, this was before social selling was really a thing. It's funny, you and I were talking about this. I remember when I got my first LinkedIn request back in the probably 2008, 2009 timeline. I'm like, what is this exactly? And over the intervening years, I owe a great deal of relationships and my career trajectory to the relationships that have been formed on LinkedIn and how impactful it's been to brand. And so I think the real moral of that story is, wherever you get your training and you cut your teeth, it's never too late in career to intentionally create and invest in personal brand and to take your sales to the next level.
I totally agree. I got my first taste when I came on the platform in 09, 010 onto LinkedIn, using it like as Facebook or something. I remember seeing my first picture. I got a full, body shot. I got just a regular shirt on. I looked like I just walked out of a Starbucks or something like that. I mean, it was nothing professional about it. I just regurgitated my resume, and that was it. Maybe somebody will contact me. But I went to a training. And at that training, I went with CenturyLink. It was 2014 or so. And the trainer said, I'm going to show you something that's going to change your sales career. I'm going to show you a tool and it's not really a tool, it was a program around how you can do social selling on LinkedIn because all your prospects are on this platform. And you've got how you're going to relate to a CIO or CTO or even an IT director, if you don't look and act the part that he sees you as a peer, he sees you as knowledgeable, and you're not doing that old, one call close. that is old. People can go to search on Google and find a lot of information, right? You've got to bring exorbitant value above that. So they don't have to search all over the internet. They can come to Carson and say, Carson, tell me about what's going on in digital transformation, and boom. Or they can go to your feed and get a lot of information. So social selling has changed the game. So my question to you is that at what point in your career that you became absolutely intentional and dove deep into social selling and saw the fruits of your labor?
Yeah, I love that question. I think you framed it up really well, Grant, because actually, ironically, I started doing it before Microsoft, and I was at a small consultant firm, and they, the head partner there was, basically utilize social to stay top of mind, find ways to stay top of mind. And I always applied it to a problem as well. I think you articulated this really well. It's like, where is my audience? Well, the preponderance of them are out on LinkedIn. And so I remember back in those days in the consultant firm, I needed to set up meetings with C-levels, and they were all out on LinkedIn. And I'm a big believer in probability and odds, which is why I don't gamble anymore, because the house always wins. But in this case, you can win by really being intentional about how you create a groundswell of relationships. And so same thing goes with personal brand. You want to position yourself as a thought leader, but you want to show up with value. With all these great tools comes great responsibility. And frankly, because our target audience can do so much research now, the onus is on us to show up with value. But I've doubled down on probability. You can control three major things when it comes to social selling and branding. And I can control the quality of what's out there. So the quality of my profile, the quality of my messaging. I can control the quantity of outreaches that I make and relationships that I invest in and nurture over time. And I can control the consistency by which I do that. Do I post something on a regular basis that's of value to my target audience? Do I, schedule sacred prospecting time every day or every week? And then the last element that I throw into that is when you think about what is the biggest problem that I'm trying to solve in whatever I do? I remember years ago when I started at Microsoft, our EVP, he would say, we're typically stuck in, IT or procurement with people that don't view us as the Microsoft that we're trying to transform into. And so I took that as, I've got to be an evangelist of this brand, but I've also got to make sure that I reach out to as many people as I can to evangelize that. Where's the audience? Where are the line of business people that I need? They're on LinkedIn. So let me double down on that. And so in some cases, I'll reach out to hundreds of people in one organization just to create the relationships and the groundswell that I need to be able to adequately add value.
Well, I think what you just said is so important. Getting outside of the box, even though you're a major technical buyer, might be in IT. You got to remember the entire enterprise, in your case, at Microsoft, the entire enterprise is probably utilizing your software in one facet or not. But you're saying, and I heard you right, email, I'm on Exchange, Microsoft Office suite. People are been around for about 20 years, right? But now you've gone into this cloud space, you've gone into this Azure space, you've gone into the security play. How can I now talk to this audience about what we're doing now, not what we have been doing, and bring value to every single one of us? Because doesn't security also play in human resources? Doesn't it also play in operations? Doesn't it also play in finance? And don't these teams need to understand? And then you get the collaboration tools. Now, everybody during this last 2 years have realized the importance of collaboration tools, right? So you're already there. Now they're like, I need to take the genie out of the bottle and show them all this other stuff. And then you're like, how do I use that, Carson? He's like, well, we're going to go talk to the technical team, but I've already been talking to them. But you bring them value because you bring the information that may not be federated around the entire company. And I got that from you also do a podcast. You're also writing books. You're also doing training. Let's talk about your brand, Carson.
Sure. Definitely want to launch into the value that it has had for me personally. It's fascinating to me because, I have kind of bookend of my career. My career at AT&T looks nothing like what I do today. And, really took a conscious effort I believed in this process. And you nailed it, Grant, because these IT and procurement relationships are so important, but I can bring more value to them by creating these other relationships, and vice versa. I can bring more value to those other relationships by understanding very well what's that investment look like that the customer makes. So I believed very strongly in this process, and I utilized it to create relationships. And ultimately, in the early going, I think a lot of people were looking at it like, well, I'm not sure what Carson's doing to drive pipeline. He's just doing this LinkedIn thing. Nobody understood it. But once multiple multi-million-dollar deals started coming out, then I'd be asked to train it. And I'd be asked to train it on like my local team. And then it would be a regional team. And then it was across the country. Now it's, I might be on a call late at night with folks in Singapore, or a meeting with Italy or France or whatever it is. It's amazing. And I thought I reached the apex of my career years ago when I was in a boiler room environment and I was standing up in front of 100 sellers every day, giving these Wolf of Wall Street like speeches, and people were cheering. I thought that was the pinnacle of my career. And I had no idea that, I would be able to understand that selling was so much more, and that it was all about the relationship. So you don't get a lot of time to develop a relationship when you're one call closing. But in enterprise sales, if you want to be good, it's all about earning the right to be the trusted advisor. And so I took that very seriously. And I bet big on social selling because I believed in it. I knew that it would give me a better probability of creating the relationships that I would need. But I'm also a lifelong student of selling. And I love the game so much that I want to continue to share best practices. And so that's what I've started doing. And in light of the pandemic, when it began, I was lamenting to a friend of mine, Grant. I was like, man, I really just miss sitting around talking about sales and leadership. And then I realized there's no geographical barriers to anything that we do anymore. So we just started recording these conversations, and then I started doing it with other people. And then it just turned into a life of its own. I had people reaching out to me, wanting to be on my podcast. And I'm like, I don't have a podcast. I don't even want to use the word because it implies commitment. And then finally, I just embraced it. Now I love it. I love meeting people all over the world that are passionate about selling. If you want to be a lifelong seller, you got to do two things. You got to be a student of the game, and you got to persevere. You got to persevere through the ups and downs because nothing good or bad lasts. And that is what I built the bedrock of my career on. I'm having the time of my life. I love it. And the personal branding element has been so good to me.
Well, you framed a lot there. And I want our journey, especially our journeyman salespeople, like the next generation that's coming up. And when somebody asked me a question, it's like, well, how do you think about sales today? Now, remember, I've been in the sales, especially technical sales, for like 20, 25 years. And I told him, oh, it's gotten easier. He's like, what do you mean? He said, do you understand when I started, you were either knocking on doors or you got lucky and had a fax machine, right? That you might be able to fax some stuff to somebody. You always had a phone. They didn't have voicemail. So maybe you get somebody on the phone. That was like a real trick, right? That was fantastic. Then this email thing came, and we were emailing and going back and forth. And we were like, man, I could send 100 emails. I can get 200. This is great. But then security came up, and you got all this spam blocking. You can't get it. If people don't know you, they're not going to open your email. All of a sudden, the lights start turning on in some of my younger sales group, even people that been doing this a long time, like email and phone call is not the beginning of the sales pipeline. I inserted social selling ahead of that because I understand people will pick up my call when they know me. They're going to pick up or read my email when they know me. So my initial conversation or touch point is going to be through social. That doesn't mean you stop all the other things that you do. And I'm glad that you talked about that. Like, that doesn't mean you don't pick up a phone. That doesn't mean you stop emailing. That doesn't mean you stop physical meetings. It's just where in the sales pipeline, the customer journey, do you insert your social selling? And what does that look like? So I want to ask you a question, Carson, because this is interesting to me. Who do you look up to for sales leadership?
Oh man, that's such a good question. It's been a lot of folks throughout the years. I think it's important to have your colleague mentors, but also your aspirational mentors. And so, you hit on something that was really important to me as well when it kind of resonated, where you think about like the next generation of selling. I had a mentor tell me not long ago, probably a couple of years back, it's like your network is your net worth. And if I were to tell my younger self anything, that would be it. Like I should have doubled down on relationships early on. Every meaningful move that I've ever made in my career has been because of a relationship. I have great leaders here that I've gravitated toward. In fact, I've played follow the leader just in the last few years. I had a leader that I respected a great deal that I followed into another organization within the company and did that again. And so I'm a big believer in gravitating toward great leadership and kind of that aspirational leadership, people that champion people. People are our greatest resource. So, people that value that and then understand like the value of people and process, because fine-tuning process and being able to execute that is so important. And that's why, Grant, you just hit on something else that is a gem and a golden nugget here. Social isn't something that replaces any part of the process whatsoever. It augments it. It adds to it. It enhances it. It's like having a diversified stock portfolio. I can't live without any of these pieces. I need to invest in all of them. Social opens doors that wouldn't have existed otherwise. And that's what I think is amazing is over the last several years, I've been able to connect with a lot of people, even via LinkedIn, like yourself, or like a Jeb Blunt or a Jeffrey Gitomer or a Mike Weinberg, who's here in St. Louis, and being able to meet with these people, thinking about some others, that have been really impactful, like Larry Long, Paul Riley, it's amazing that, again, there's no geographical barriers. And, we were talking earlier, I didn't used to get asked to be on podcasts, right? I used to cold email, some of these folks. And that's how I got on Jeb Blunt and Jeffrey Gitomer's show and years ago. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, there was kind of this cross section where I'd never had to ask to be on a show again. I started doing the asking if people would be on my show, right? So it's really interesting. I look up to people that are passionate about people and process, and then understand that sales is something that we're lifelong students of. So some of the people that I've outlined here are definitely leaders that I look up to. And then there's also a lot of them that are within my organization or within our robust partner ecosystem that I've gravitated to over the years. I pick up a little something from everybody.
This episode is brought to you by 5-Star BDM. 5-Star BDM is a professional consulting and advisory group keenly focused on business development services for small to mid-sized businesses and entrepreneurs. Although every business is unique, they often share challenges that can be addressed through smart branding. Services include process improvement in operations, digital strategy and transformation, business intelligence, digital marketing, and personal branding. Our 5-Star business and personal branding company has helped a number of professionals and organizations to optimize and grow. The result is more business, more opportunities, better reach, positive outcomes. Please visit www.5starbdm.com to learn more and view all the episodes of Follow the Brand. I love it. One of the things I know I really love about when I pivoted to the LinkedIn as far as social selling, you go to a networking event or you go to a convention, you collect these business cards, right? Business cards is cool. That was the thing. The first thing you did in the first 30 seconds, kind of rip out your card, right? And kind of a card exchange. Everybody kind of, did this card exchange when you sit down at a meeting, of stakeholders, everybody kind of whips out their card, right? And you still want to get the card, but you've got to get the LinkedIn profile. Reason being, I remember something you brought up in your last podcast that you were on, that you had a lot of leaders that you were working on. This is a big deal, big multi-deal, 7, 8, 9-figure deals. People leave. You have your champions and they leave, right? So they're no longer in the position that they were. When you're connected to them via social, you're still connected to them. No, so that card no longer makes it's not a good contact. That phone number is not good. The email on there is not good. But when you're connected to them via LinkedIn, no matter where they went, that's another opportunity to sell at another company. You still got the connection. You want to elaborate on that?
I love that so much. Recently, our team completed a 9-figure deal that started with relationships on LinkedIn. And I mean, this was one where we created a groundswell. We reached out to over 500 people in this organization. As we started making the rounds with some of the executive roundtables and things like that, I mean, they'd say things like, hey, if we can prove this out, we'll introduce you to this person or that person. We already knew them because we had created the relationship, gotten in the door via LinkedIn. We tried to take a very counterintuitive approach. We found a lot of times, take the objection that you're getting as to why you can't get the meeting and infuse that into your outreach. Typically, because we typically only had relationships in IT, a lot of other executives didn't know anything at all about the resources that they were entitled to as a result of an investment with our company. So to be able to utilize that as like my door opener that, hey, you're entitled to resources. I would love to make sure you're aware of those. I'm not showing up to sell you something. I'm showing up to add value. And here's some perspective. Here's some points of view. I know that per your company reports, this is a priority. We've got some perspective on this, and I'd like to introduce you to this, executive contact or whatever it is. But that's how we got in the door. And you said something else super important there, Grant. There were a lot of these people that left. And over my career, I've seen so many times where we developed and cultivated a phenomenal relationship with an executive, and maybe they couldn't even do business with us at that organization, but then they left. And because we had actually invested in that relationship, guess what? Now they can do business with us. You're the first person they call. I've had so many people in my career tell me, Carson, you're more expensive, but we do business with you because you're responsive, you're communicative. You show me the trail of like you seeking answers on our behalf. I can always get a hold of you. And I know that you're advocating for us and working for us and this and that. It goes back to earning the right to be a trusted advisor. And if you do that, you invest in all these situations, not everything pans out immediately. We've got to get away from this instant gratification expectation because no great deal happens immediately. Deals are a byproduct of great relationships and communication and transparency, mutual respect, working on milestones together. That's how deals happen. Collaboration, not because you know your product inside and out, or not because you keep calling or dialing or whatever it is. It's all about investing in the relationship. You said that so well. And I've seen people go on to be like at other prominent roles in other companies, and now you've planted the seed, and so you can do business in multiple locations because you did such a good job of that.
You've expanded your reach, you've expanded your funnel, you've expanded your brand. Because most likely, especially when you got a big brand like a Microsoft, it's most likely that wherever they go, they'll have some form or fashion of Microsoft there. Now it's just a matter of how you can grow the relationship, even if you've got to hand it off because it's someone else's territory or something like that. That is fantastic. That's internal selling right there. Like, hey, look, I've got a relationship with this particular individual. I know them inside now. Let me, give you some good tips and that type of thing. So you become a resource internally and externally. I think that's wonderful. Now, you've written some books also on selling. Can you elaborate? Tell us about some of the things that you're doing.
Yeah, it's funny. I've always wanted to write. And when I was a kid, I'd write these short stories that incorporated like my friends and I going into outer space or time traveling. Like I always wanted to write something. And when I was at AT&T, I was writing this column as part of a newsletter. And it was all about selling and leadership and things of that nature. And I wanted to write a sales book, but it's been done so many times so well. So I was like, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. So I kind of created this fictional story. And I wrote a book inside a book, a sales book written by a fictional protagonist. And it also tells his journey, right? He starts out as kind of a young phenom seller. He's got some ups and downs, has to learn how to play the game. And, it's all about that journey. And it's interesting too, Grant, because when I wrote this, I had no real expectation. I ended up, once when I was looking for my next role, my resume actually was noticed, talk about brand, My resume was noticed because I had written the book. That's what made it stand out amongst the hundreds of people that were applying. I got in the interview room. I was one of the 30 resumes that they selected, and I ended up getting the role. And it was because of that role that I was noticed for my next role. And it was because of that role that I met someone that recruited me ultimately to Microsoft. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that book. So my encouragement is, if you got something you want to say it, write it. And not everything you do or create is going to be a winner. Right? I've done videos and blogs that nobody's read or watched, right? Just create. Be consistent with execution. Infuse what you're passionate about into what you do. Yours may not be a book, right? Just create and get something out there. Don't be afraid to create. You'll look back and you'll be so glad you did. Mine made all the difference in the world for me.
I completely agree with that. That's why I do the podcast. I love doing the podcast. It definitely gets my brand out there, but more importantly, it gets the brand of my guests out there. And we bring in the audience because I love to bring good information, good knowledge, good insight to the people that are tuning in to the podcast. Now you've given me an idea, because one of the first things, remember, I have a TV series, right? We have Follow the Brand TV series. And the very first episode that I did, I recapped my first multi-million-dollar deal. And I did that back in 1999, and I sold a multi-million-dollar telephone system to the Diplomat Hotel in Hollywood, Hallandale, Florida, which was a big, big deal.
Yeah.
And I retold that whole entire story. And I think I am going to reproduce that into a book, because it shows you from a sales perspective. You always hear about selling, right? This is not order taking. I came into a position in which I had no funnel, and I was working for a small VAR, right, in Florida. And they just took on this product line. No one had really sold it. And they were selling really the lower version of it. And they said, okay, Grant, here you go. Go after it. Remember, I talked earlier, like, there's no social selling out here. You got a phone, and I think maybe you had email at the time, right? And I had to create value immediately. And I had to niche down. I niched into hotels. I niched into what was happening in the industry, and that was Y2K. And what was happening, people had to upgrade because they were fearful that their systems would not work because of Y2K. And that's what I focused on. And I was able to get the groundswell, as you talked about, at multiple hotel systems, but it culminated into the granddaddy of them all. Right. And I sold that deal. So it's a great, great story. I think there's a lot of people out there, especially in our industry, that have great stories. Like, man, you'll never guess what happened here or there. That needs to tell that story. And that's why I do what I do. I want to hear those stories. Yeah. I think it's important because we do need to set the tone for the next generation as they come up. I want to talk to that 25-year-old who's just getting out there, because the first thing you typically do, you get out of college, you got this great degree and all this stuff, they're going to probably hand you a sales job. You're like, oh my God, what is this? But if you get good, if you master the craft of selling, you will never be unemployed. You will always have an opportunity to make money and survive and take care of yourself and your family. You agree with that?
Quotable. That's a quotable right there. That's the poster.
I believe that. So before I let you go, Carson, I want to give you the mic. I want you to talk directly to that 25-year-old salesperson who's just getting out there. He's got his teeth, are sinking into technical sales. He's looking at the cathedrals of all these different companies, and he's like, how in the heck am I going to make an impact? What would you say?
Yeah, I love that, Grant. It's slow it down and take it a move at a time. I think I was in such a hurry when I was that age, and always plotting like the next role and the next role and the next role after that. And the reality is, master the step, be a student, and focus on how do you infuse what you're passionate about and your unique superpowers into what you do and into delivering wins to other people, the people you work with, the customers that you serve, whatever it is. If you do that, you'll win. You'll be successful. Michael Jordan is my favorite athlete of all time. And everything that I've read about Jordan, it was always about being a student of the game and understanding all the nuances, all the parameters, the game inside the game. But it was also about challenges, giving yourself challenges that, you continue to deliver at a high level and to leave no gaps in your process. I don't care how good you are. There's always something that you can be better at. I always have sought out people that were doing well at something, especially maybe that I wasn't doing well at, so that I could assimilate that into my process and get better. Rarely does it take any food off the table for us to share our best practices and our stories with others. And there's real value in that. And I'm like you, I seek out stories. I want to know, what are the greats doing? How do I infuse that into my process and get better? And if you keep people and relationships and resources at the heart of everything that you do, you cannot be stopped. Now, here's the other thing too. You're going to have some ups and downs. I've seen a lot of people that have come into sales careers, and I got into sales by accident, but I've seen a lot of people that have gone into sales careers and they start out, right out of the gates, they're firing on all cylinders. They crush it. They think, oh, I'm ready for a promotion 3-6 months in. Well, and then that's when the challenges start settling in. Over a period of time and over a career of selling, you're going to have a lot of ups and downs. A lot of things are going to happen to you, fair or unfair. And it's how you react and respond to that is going to determine your success or failure or your destiny. The last thing I'll leave you with is, there's a Chinese proverb, and it was quoted to me earlier this week on a thread on LinkedIn, actually. And it's, get knocked down 7 times, you get up 8. And that has really served me well. I've had a lot of things happen to me in my career that could have been debilitating, but I just chose to get up and fight back harder. And I look back on my career and I'm so thankful and grateful for all the relationships and even the losses that I've had over time. Those are the types of things that will really ultimately define you, is how you treat people, how you invest in relationships, and how you work to perfect your craft, like you said before. So if you're that next generation of selling, choose to be a noble knight of the selling game, and you'll do fine.
Excellent. Couldn't have said it better, Carson. So if they want to get in touch with you, what is the best way?
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great way. I would love to connect on LinkedIn. I'm also on Twitter. So, feel free to reach out. I've got a blog that is published as well at carsonvheady.com. So those are the ways. And I do truly, sincerely encourage you to, because I love meeting sellers globally as we all perfect our craft.
And there's one thing that you've just got an award for, an achievement for. I'd like you to expand on that.
Which one is that?
That's the Dale Carnegie.
Oh, yeah. So this is another example of something that's amazing, that if you continue to kind of give into the world, amazing things can happen, because of a relationship and a connection. I got, just kind of an outreach from the Dale Carnegie group to contribute to a training that they do on modern selling. And it's just unbelievable opportunity. It's one of those things I just said yes to immediately. Didn't need a lot of details around it. Committed to doing some activities and providing some content, and here we are. And I think that's the key. Is I would add one more thing to my advice to the 25-year-old seller: say yes to opportunities. You never know exactly where they're going to go, and I've been really fortunate to get a lot thrown my way. But I pretty much say yes every time, sometimes to my detriment. But you'll get a lot of great things that are thrown your way if you give into the world.
Well, your track record speaks for itself. I call it the body of work. The body of work for Carson speaks for itself. When he said, the number one seller, you're in the Sales Hall of Fame. I think that is wonderful. You're doing great things. I want to see you continue to do great things. And I want to encourage the audience to tune in to all of our episodes that have great content. They are there for you to educate yourself, to get knowledge, so you are prepared for that next level. Tune in at www.5starbdm. That's B for brand, D for development, and M for masters.com. Thank you very much, Carson, for being on the Follow Brand Podcast.
Grant, thank you so much for having me, my friend. Good luck with everything you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you.